to talk about the new technology and how it is impacting the entire gaming ecosystem across the three big areas of developers, esports teams, and fans, all bringing fantastic innovation to the industry. But today, there is also a fourth area that is very timely for us to talk about, and that is the importance of supporting diversity in the gaming industry. As technology stretches the boundaries of what's possible, and as the industry grows, the players and the fans are more diverse than ever. And so a different sort of innovation is required. With this shift, and this is something that is very close to my heart, actions to increase diversity and inclusion within the gaming community are more important than ever, more urgent than ever, especially those supporting female representation. Diversity has become a major force driving the industry forward. And as the players and their fans who are consuming these products become more diverse, it makes a lot of sense that the people who make the products, so the developers, should also reflect that diversity. I am a firm believer that change starts with action. And we are taking action together with Riot Games. In March, we partnered with Riot to launch the Valorant VCT Game Changers Initiative. It is a fantastic program that elevates women and other diverse groups within the esports community. And most importantly, it inspires the next generation of players. So to talk more about the need for increased female representation, I am thrilled to introduce now the executive producer of Valorant, Anna Dunlon. Anna, welcome.
Diego, thank you for having me.
It's so great to have you here.
I've never been on the E3 stage before. This is really exciting.
Well, I'll tell you, that makes us two, because this is my first E3 too. But I'm very excited to have you here, especially because you are one of the most influential women in an industry that is predominantly male, from players to developers to heads of publishers. So I really was looking forward to this conversation and ask you, what are some of the biggest challenges you see for female players and also for those that are trying to build their careers in tech?
It's a great question. It's an important question. And I really like that you're asking it from both angles. So when it comes to competitive gaming, women still find themselves at a huge disadvantage. And it has absolutely nothing to do with skill. It's because they can't focus 100% on the game. Instead, they need to spend energy dealing with all the harassment they face. And having experienced it firsthand myself, it can be daunting, and it takes away from the focus of the actual competition. And how is that fair?
No, it's not fair. It's not fair at all.
It isn't. And it's something we spend a lot of time discussing on Valorant and at Riot. And, you know, it's not a terribly easy problem to solve, but the problems we're solving are rarely easy. What I will say is that we're absolutely committed to creating an inclusive environment for competition and creating safe opportunities for women to compete without fear of identity or gender-based harassment. So that's the gaming aspect.
That's so interesting and so real. So let me ask you then, when we talk about careers, what's the situation there?
Okay, so when it comes to careers in gaming, there's definitely work to be done there as well. I was fortunate enough to have a really impactful mentor early on. I had just started a job at a temp company, and while I played games, I had no idea what a career in gaming could even look like. And then at this gaming company, one of the women I was working with told me she thought I had what it took to become a game producer. I had no idea what a game producer was, but I went with it, and now 20+ years later, here I am. And as you mentioned, there are not enough women in the industry, so it means a lot that she brought me with her. I try to pay that forward to all the women who are coming up after me, but we need more.
Wow, I tell you, your story is so inspiring, and it's the first time that I actually hear you saying it like that. So thank you, and it just reinforces how important mentorship is. So a little bit of a follow-up to the previous question, but how can both then technology and commitments to allyship play a role in the changes that we still need to see in the industry?
So I'll tell you, one of the most exciting parts of being a developer is that I get to be part of creating the future of Valorant. My team and I spend all of our time dreaming and exploring ways to make the player experience even better. And then we get to go and actually build it. It's a really interesting mix of creativity and engineering. All of the technology you've mentioned on stage today is impacting how we work and what we're able to create. So please keep those advancements coming. When it comes to specific changes that need to be made to protect women in competitive gaming, we absolutely need to keep investing and prioritizing innovations that help fight against harassment. And honestly, the gaming community needs to take a more active role in the community that it's creating. If game developers can be allies, and I truly believe we can and should, then so can your teammates in game. And again, we just need more women throughout the whole gaming ecosystem. We need an industry-wide commitment around diversity and inclusion, and we're finally starting to see that.
I like the way you said, and I couldn't agree more. We need more women, we need more diversity in the industry, and that's why we're taking it to the next level. Today, we are announcing an expansion of our commitment to the Valorant Game Changers Initiative. We are launching together today a new training program dedicated to mentoring up-and-coming female esports casters. The program that is launching very soon this fall will team up them with professionals in the field to provide them with practical tools and knowledge to help advance their careers. It's pretty cool, huh?
Okay, so this is amazing. Game Changers is all about providing experience and exposure to women in gaming. We want to inspire the next generation of not only players, but any women who want to build careers in any aspect of the gaming industry. So this program fits so perfectly with our mission. It'll provide a pipeline of female talent that is so sorely lacking. I am so glad that Verizon is not only acknowledging the issue, but taking actions to push for change.
Well, I love what you say, but the reality is that no one can make real change alone. So we are equally thankful for your support and for Riot's support as well. Fantastic job.
Thank you. And
so Anna, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for the great conversation.
thank you so much for having me, Diego. And honestly, thank you so much for caring about it as much as I do.
It's great to have you. Thank you.
Thanks.
So now I have a final big announcement, and I want to ask Nikki to help me with it. So come on out, Nikki.
Yes, Diego, this is big, and I am so proud to help announce it. You know, Verizon is deeply committed to building a more inclusive and diverse tech sector. Our work in this space has been going on for decades and frankly speaks for itself.
We are so proud of the work we've done, but we also know that more action needs to be taken to address the lack of female representation in gaming and more broadly in STEM. So today, Verizon is making a new $1 million commitment to increase female representation in gaming and STEM. For this, we are creating the Verizon Game Forward Scholarship. The scholarship is an expansion of the Future Fund, our initiative to support emerging female talent across entertainment and technology.
That's right. And you know, this fall, Verizon will partner with 5 historically Black colleges and universities to provide scholarships to 5 female students at each school who are active gamers and also pursuing degrees in fields that are tied to gaming development, such as computer science, graphic design, software engineering. And those 5 schools are Dillard, Delaware State, Morgan State, Texas Southern University, and Howard. We'll build tech centers on each of these campuses that will be open to the entire student body. And we'll also provide the scholarship recipients with access to the Verizon 5G Gaming Center for training, as well as mentorship.
And I tell you, here's the best part. We are guaranteeing the students internship opportunities at Verizon and with our gaming industry partners. It is these kinds of deep commitments that will help build the diverse talent pipeline the tech industry needs. We are really so proud of this and for the opportunities it will give these women.
Absolutely. And you know, I just cannot wait to see what these students do.
Nikki, thank you.
Thank you.
So I hope the last 30 minutes have clarified why Verizon is here for two big reasons. Number one, technology. Verizon has a vision for how 5G and related technologies will bring an entirely new level of creation and experience of gaming for the developers, for esports teams, and for the fans. And secondly, we see this next gaming generation wanting and needing inclusivity, an industry that is more diverse and more welcoming of new faces, new voices, and new perspectives. We are here to help make astonishing things happen in gaming and esports. But we're also here to listen and to learn. Gaming is a sector of bold thinkers, free spirits, and wide open creativity. Verizon wants to support that and empower it even further. So we look forward to working with you and playing with you for a long time to come. Thank you.
Welcome back to the E3 2021 caster desk. It's me, it's Jackie, and Jackie, two very interesting announcements there at the end for Verizon, right? Number one, Verizon and Riot teaming up for the Game Changers Mentorship Program, huge. And then, of course, this Verizon Game Forward Scholarship. 5 historically black colleges, 5 gamers at each one getting not only a scholarship for school, getting guaranteed internships at Verizon or game partners. It's a $1 million program. It's about building the tech sector and obviously getting women and minorities involved in this. How important is this, Jackie?
Honestly, they kept on echoing that we need action.
Yeah.
To create change, like we need to start doing things like this. And you think that we've made so much progress, but I can't even tell you how many times people come up to me and they're like, "You play video games?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't think that you would be into that." And I'm just like, man, it's crazy. Gamers come from all walks of life. And, you know, we heard Anna Donlan talking about this a little bit, but sometimes when you're a woman, it can be very discouraging. A Twitch chat can be extremely harsh. Social media, like it can be extremely painful. But seeing something like this that is uplifting and encouraging, I'm so excited for it. And you know, they kept on talking about the next generation. So many young women out there are watching this, and I'm sure that they're like, wow, like there's scholarship money out there for this. Someone's like, you can do this, and it really warmed my heart. So
100%.
happy to see it. Really happy to see it.
And yeah, one of the things in there before I toss for you, of course, is that Anna was talking in the Riot segment, right? That the gaming community needs to be better about building the community it's in.
Yes.
And I can't agree with that enough. If you know anything about Greg Miller and Kinda Funny, being better is a big part of what we always talk about. Is be better to each other and don't be a jerk. And I know right now on our very own Twitch page right here, a bunch of people are being jerks. And everybody who's a good person, which is the majority of gamers, need to step up, ladies and gentlemen, and of course show that the positive outshines the negative. That's my rant. Goodbye on that
Thank
one.
you so much for that.
Verizon and Riot, what a team up for the future. Let's talk about esports though, right? And speaking of esports, I want to hear from more of the voices on the scene about how esports has evolved over the years and where it's headed. Man, I think if you go back to the youth, there's so many things that put me on this path here, right? But I think for impactful games, the first thing that comes to mind is more modern. I think of Gone Home.
Oh,
if you haven't played Gone Home, of course, right? It's a walking simulator, and when Gone Home hit, I was told by everyone on the internet to go play it and read nothing about it, which means I will now spoil Gone Home for you. I played that game like so many people did, thinking it was a horror game. And then slowly there's this side story building about, you know, your sister and she's missing and what's going on with it, and you're reading the notes she's left. And slowly over time, it's like, oh my God, like she's falling in love. Oh my God, she's discovering she's gay. Oh my, and then it was like, wait a second, is this game a horror game at all, or is it all about that relationship? And it was all about that relationship. And, you know, no video game, no work of fiction, of course, can tell you exactly what it's like to be LGBTQ. But for me, as you know, a hetero white male, where everything's great all the time, right? This was a window, at least, into it of what that discovery is like, and the pressure of it, and what you're going through. And it opened up a window of empathy that, I've heard stories before, but to kind of experience it, in a video game way, of being in there and reading these intimate thoughts on a level that I don't get in a passing conversation with somebody, it was so powerful that when that game ended, I felt like I had a brand new empathy for what, LGBTQ people have to go through, of course.
Yeah, wow. Definitely got to check that game out now.
Yeah, no, for real. I'm like, I am completely sold. I've heard great things about it as well, but I'm like, okay, everybody, Greg Miller says to play it, I'm playing it.
I'll quickly run over what happened in the Verizon, I wouldn't even call it a press conference, the Verizon section, where they kind of committed to more funding for women and minorities in the gaming industry, offering to pay for some scholarships, which is great. I think that's a really noble and worthwhile thing. Honestly, I did tune out a little bit when they were talking about 5G and everything, because
there's definitely some kind of vibe that has built up over the years that, like, it's okay to be mean in a game. And I think that's got to change.
We've all had bad days. We all get rolled because it's the same, like, 12-year-old cranking 90s on us in the Fortnite lobby, and we can't build as quick, and he just builds a Taj Mahal and then just drops down on you and you're angry. I get it, but
I don't think we should all be okay with just accepting, like, oh, this is how people talk on this video game. Like, that is not okay.
There's a difference between conflict and dialogue. When you're having a conversation, you don't have to agree. When it's becoming something that's toxic, right, there's no respect.
it's a social contract you enter into as a human when you walk out your front door. That is that you will act with decency. And it follows that this would also be imposed online.
And it's easier to just say, oh, mute your mic or don't say anything, but no, do better.
We just shouldn't foster an environment where saying something bad is okay. It should never be okay. It should never be on the receiver to grow thicker skin.
Having other people in the community that have gone through that and that you can connect with is probably the most therapeutic, helpful part.
Find those people that you connect with and have that support group.
I think just pushing a positive environment is a good place to start.
If you see something, say something. I think it starts with all of us standing up.
I don't know, it just feels like the right thing to do, to speak loudly about things that really matter.
I think over the years, the space has become a lot more welcoming, a lot more open.
There's such an overwhelming presence of, like, positivity and acceptance and diversity, and
great strides are being made, but I also think that, like, more can be done from us as the people that like to play them to make sure that that happens.
Keep playing because you love the game, and no one should be able to take you from what you love.
I always really appreciate queer narratives, trans narratives, gender diverse narratives. Tell Me Why by Don't Nod, with a trans character as one of the main characters, is huge. I can't recall many, if any, main characters that are trans that are playable. Being someone who identifies as non-binary, seeing someone that is proudly trans represented in a game is just so incredible to me, because it shows that not only game developers but the world is seeing these narratives as important things and stories to tell, because games are just another way of telling stories.
But anyways, so games have changed so much over the years by becoming more inclusive and representative of their player bases, but there's still more work to be done in this space. Let's discuss how we can make games more inclusive.
Okay.
Yay!
I think that representation is really one of the biggest things that the gaming industry needs to tackle.
The more diversity we have in the industry, the more voices we have, and that is how you grow something.
There's no one type of gamer. There's no one type of gamer that looks the same either.
Bringing in people from different backgrounds makes the place generally more interesting.
Like, I have no problem, like, stepping into the shoes of, you know, of Nathan Drake or, like, some other, like, you know, white male protagonist. But, you know, just realizing eventually, like, wait a minute, nobody's being asked to step into my shoes. What's up with that?
I want you to be able, when you pick up most games, that you see yourself in some way in those games.
The areas that you don't hear about gaming in which Black people are working, like, I think advocating for their visibility and bringing them up is very, very key as well.
When you're developing the game, they're like, okay, we can start adding this Black representation, this, you know, brown representation into the game from the ground up, and then, I mean, that alleviates the problem.
This is where we need to have programs in place to allow more women, more people of color to have a transition into this space and an opportunity to work their way up the ladder like everyone else.
It's gonna make a huge difference on how your games are created. The diversity in the space helps everyone, I promise, I promise, I promise.
And I also think that some of it falls on consumers as well, and us and gamers, in supporting these games, and supporting games that are positively showing diversity in our community and representing the gaming community.
Female gamers make up 48%, and you wouldn't even know it by looking from the outside in. So that's what I would want to change.
The next era of gaming is just going to be so sweet, and I am super excited about it. We are definitely heading in that direction, but I can't wait until everyone is part of it and everyone has great ideas and everyone just feels like they belong in the community, and it's just going to be a great time when that happens.
I'm curious, with this storyline, did you do any research about coding, talk to any developers? How did you prepare to sort of get in Dana's headspace here?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to speak directly with Tracy Fullerton, who is really big in the game design industry and just really paved the way for women in gaming in general. And it was very helpful because, you know, outside of Ashley Birch, I don't have a lot of gamers in my community of friends. And yeah, we hopped on a Zoom and I got to really pick her brain about just what it looks like to climb the ranks within the game industry and specifically as a woman in gaming. And yeah, it was just, it was a nice tool to add to my toolbox to have that relationship with Tracy. She was very open and willing to give information, and it really added to Dana's storyline and just the overall character development and how I approached that storyline in general.
Yeah, it's interesting, especially when you contrast that a bit with Rachel, because Dana is a character that, you know, when you see her interact with Poppy, she's not really afraid to speak truth to power, but then Poppy's able to kind of like be like, no, I'm your boss. Stop this. Well, something I kind of want to go back to is something we touched on briefly before, talking about trying to sort of balance the more comedic elements with trying to really touch on these sort of heavier issues or things that are endemic to the industry, things that are actually like real issues. And something that you sort of touch on in various ways is sort of the role of women in gaming, women in leadership, because in video gaming, it feels like it can be a sort of culturally or traditionally male-dominated industry. So I'm curious, both in front of and behind the camera, were there any goals or expectations or concerns in how you approached that and how you wanted to portray the women of Mythic Quest?
I think we always start from a place of, you know, wanting to be funny. And that's not to say we don't take those matters seriously. It's just that sometimes talking about them with a twist of humor and a lightheartedness actually makes that medicine easier to swallow for people. And I think it just lands a little bit better. I think, like, for instance, in our first season, we did the whole thing where the girls can code came around and David was supposed to be showing them around the office and introducing them to Poppy, and she's not there that day. And just the humor of this guy's trying to do good. He's trying to right the wrongs of the industry, but like the industry itself is making it difficult for him to do that. And that's a funny, relatable place. There's no villain in that necessarily in that space, but you're also not making light of the problem. You're just making light of this character's situation within that problem. So we always look for things like that when approaching that, but always from a place of, is this funny? And is it going to feel authentic and not pandering, like we're trying to gloss over an issue? And so that's how we approach those things.
Hello, I'm Alan Lewis, Vice President of Corporate Communications and Public Affairs for Take-Two Interactive. Thank you for joining us today and welcome to Virtual E3 2021. Take-Two, like many organizations, is deeply committed to and actively involved in numerous initiatives to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion within our society and industry. Affecting meaningful, sustainable change is a continuous process, and there is no one solution that can achieve that goal. We believe that to enact change, especially for those in underserved and underrepresented communities, there needs to be a continuum of activism and engagement with educational programs serving as its core foundation. Beginning with children in elementary school, we have the ability to light a spark of creativity, intellectual curiosity, and wonder that can last a lifetime. Continuing through middle and high school, we can support and nurture students during their formative years and increase the depth of their skills that can provide a pathway to attending one of the 400 plus colleges and universities within the United States that offer degrees in game design. Providing opportunities to attend these academic institutions, including need-based financial support, is also a critical component to helping end generational cycles of inequality. And while pursuing their creative and technical degrees, students can learn firsthand from industry leaders that share their experience, acumen, and passion through one-on-one mentoring and internships at our organization. Together, if our industry can execute this continuum, we will have invested meaningfully in the lives of the youth from these communities for more than a decade before they begin their professional journey. Diversity and inclusion make us a better industry for today, and most importantly, for tomorrow. It allows us to make better entertainment experiences that are authentic, culturally relevant, and reflective of the audiences that enjoy them. Today, we have brought together a few of our important partners who will share their organization's mission and role in this endeavor, as well as their insights on how we as an industry can continue to take these important steps together for the future. We hope that you find their work as inspiring as we do. It is now my pleasure to turn things over to my colleague, Tony Lagans, Director of Diversity and Inclusion for 2K, who will be the moderator for today's discussion.
Thanks, Alan. It's my pleasure to be your moderator for today's session. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce my esteemed panelists today. We're going to start off with Jim Huntley. Jim Huntley is currently the professor and head of marketing at USC. Jim is a faculty advisor, and he's an executive producer for USC Games Expo and a co-founding partner of PathView Gaming. Next, we have Susanna Pollitt. Susanna is the president of Games for Change, which is a nonprofit that empowers game creators and social innovators to drive real-world impact through games and immersive media. Next to Susanna, we have Gordon Bellamy. Gordon is a professor of practice of cinematographic arts at USC. He is also the head of USC Bridge Incubator, which is a program that helps to cultivate the next generation of leaders in the video game industry. And last, next to Gordon, we have Layla Shabir. Layla is the founder of Girls Make Games, which offers a series of summer camps, workshops, and game jams designed to inspire the next generation of designers, creators, and engineers. Welcome to all of you, great panelists, and thank you so much for joining our important discussion today. Now, I'd like to dive right in here, and Jim, I'm gonna start with you. In Alan's opening, he mentioned something that was so important, and it was really just talking about the increasing role that diversity, equity, and inclusion it is playing in the video game industry today. So before we get into the big concepts that we're talking about here, let's just break some things down for our viewers. Jim, can you help us understand and talk about equity and diversity and why it's so important in the conversation about the video game industry today?
Absolutely. Equity and diversity has been a challenge for the gaming industry since its inception. It hasn't really changed very, very much over time, but I think the biggest change that people are seeing in the last 2 to 3 years are the lack of it in the modern era and the rationale that there's no excuse behind not having better equity and diversity in the industry from here on out. So what I like about working with companies like Take-Two and some other companies that have reached out to me about an initiative we started called the Gerald A. Lawson Endowment Fund is that companies are now looking to invest in getting more diversity in their ranks and getting more stories told from different points of view.
I appreciate that. That's great conversation there. So let's talk about just kind of the inequities and why is it so important to have these conversations. Talk about that whole aspect and just getting people in the right mindset to understand what's available for them as majors in this industry. Jim, just talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So A lot of what we've been focusing on from a USC Games perspective is making sure that students of color, Black and Indigenous students in particular, because they have the least amount of representation within our industry out of all the various demographic groups. We've been focusing on scholarships, but the challenge that we have, and I think the challenge that society and the industry has, is it starts earlier than that. There's a phrase from, I can't remember who to attribute to, but there's a phrase that he used that I remember saying, the inequities of our past pay dividends into the future. And that sticks with me, because the reality is, if you don't have a great opportunity or access to computer science labs and specialized education in grade school and high school and junior high school, the odds of you having a great portfolio piece when it comes time to apply to a program like ours puts you at a deficit. And if that deficit keeps rolling on into the future, generation after generation, the gap between the ability to get into some of these slots in game design and not being able to get them gets wider and wider. So we need to do a better job as a society, and we are willing to do our part and help work with companies like Take-Two to lead the vanguard on how do we get students some opportunity from grade school? Like, how do we make sure they can see this as an option? Because when I, as a Black man, get in front of a small group of grade school students, and I say I work in the video game industry, you can see the eyes just their minds explode, because they've never seen anyone like me and the videos they see on YouTube or other visitors to their classes and to their seminars. So it's important to show that we have a presence here, but it's also important to make sure that the students who look like us, who are 20 years, 30 years, 40 years behind us, also have the opportunities that we didn't in some cases to get a job in this industry.
Yes, thank you so much for your insight. So important there. Susanna, that really kind of speaks to a lot of the great work that you're doing in helping to reach this underserved community. Can you talk about the work that Games for Change is doing?
Sure. So, our mission, as you said earlier, is to empower game designers and social innovators, right? To use games for social change. And we see our work with younger people as really inspiring the next generation, right? And so just what Jim was saying, like we're going as young as sixth grade, sometimes fifth grade, but trying to give young people, and mostly in Title I schools, so those are schools that qualify for free lunches, which often are representing the underserved communities, an opportunity to dive in deeply into this gaming industry, this experience they all love to do, and help them become creators of this content, not just consumers. And we've been finding that the program that we've been running called the Games for Change Student Challenge. We've been running it for the past 6 years. We've reached over 30,000 young people in middle and high school. And we not only give them an opportunity to learn how to make games, but we also combine that with civic engagement. So they have to think about how games can help make their communities better. So right from the start, we want to empower them to think about this really important medium, not only as something they love to do, but they actually can make. They're learning important 21st century and STEM skills that can help them regardless of what career path. But what we really hope to see happen is that they see a future for themselves and they see an opportunity, a pathway for them. And part of our program, an important part of it, is this idea of mentoring, and mentoring from near peers and also from people from the community. So as Jim says, it's so important they see themselves in the people that are coming to speak to them. So when we're in Los Angeles, for example, we can reach out to USC Games for game design students to come and speak to the kids, that we can bring people in from Riot or Activision or from Take-Two to come in and say, yes, this is what I do, and this is something for you. And we do the same thing in New York and working in Atlanta and Detroit. And I can tell you that students are coming back year on year, and we're seeing them use this program as like their college essay, or they're building their portfolio. And I love the idea that, if we can get to them at a young age, they spend their summers with Layla at Girls Make Games, and then they can go on and apply to college, and we're talking about this pipeline or this pathway for them. And so that's that role and what we hope to inspire.
I love what you said there, Suzanne. There's so many little nuggets that you just pulled out there. The different avenues you can have and career pathways there are in the gaming industry. just the activity that you can have in terms of having mentorship and role models and representation, and just, having good gamers out there. So there's so many things that you talked about that I want to hit on. Let's just pull Layla into this conversation and just talk about the idea of mentorship and representation. Layla, talk about the workshops and the summer programs that you offer to girls. How does that help to increase the representation and the mentorship aspects that we've talked about?
Thanks so much for having me. I was on mute. This is 2021, still going on mute. But like Susanna said, I think it's really important to kind of pass that baton on. And I think we see this summer after summer, having created a place that's, for girls. We get this question a lot. Why do you need a space that's just for girls? There's so many programs out there that are open to everyone. But I think it's just so important to create that space because, like Jim talked about, it's so important to see people who are like yourselves. For many of the girls that come to camp, this is their first time walking into a room full of girls who love video games. They've been so accustomed to kind of being the only girl on their robotics team, or the only girl that went to a coding camp with their brother, and the girl who's fighting her brothers for the Xbox controller. So those are very common themes and stories, and I think it's important to kind of tie in not just the mentorship, but also the community. It's very important to walk into a room and feel like you're not an outsider, and the best way to do that is to show many more faces that look just like you. It's really validating to walk away, not just with the technical skills, but to feel like these are people that I'm going to, kind of encounter in 10, 15 years, and we'll be like professionals, because right now we're just kids making games, but we'll be professionals in a few years. And 7 years out for Girls Make Games, we're finally starting to see, these girls kind of make plans together to go to college. And this year, I would say, like, the first time we got in like dozens of emails from families saying, my daughter is now thinking of college, and how do we get this portfolio going? How do we set that up? So I think, touching on Jim's point too, there's so many challenges that, people have to go through just to get everything right. You shouldn't have to rely on luck so much. So if you look at the women who are now excelling and thriving in the industry, and you ask them their stories, so many things had to go right in their lives to finally end up in the industry, many of whom ended up there accidentally, like me and even Tony. I think Tony and I touched on that earlier. But it shouldn't have to be luck or accident. We can actually intentionally create these pipelines. And I think it requires all of us working together, like everyone in this room, talking about what we're doing and how do we pass our students on from, we start as young as 8, getting them onto the programs and then passing them on to the student challenge and then on to USC and then finally on to the industry. I think that's basically the magic formula to solving the problem that we're talking about today.
Yes, thank you for hitting on that pipeline challenge and actually solution. You really clearly laid it out there for us. I really, really enjoy that. And something else you mentioned is just like really opening this world of gaming to new, diverse, a pool and a spectrum of gamers. And how do we create those real pathways back into the gaming industry? Gordon, you've done a lot of work in just helping to create value where value was not seen in places in the gaming industry, specifically for the gay gaming professionals. Can you talk about how the representation and widening the spectrum of what gaming professional looks like and how your company and your role really accomplishes that?
Sure. So we have a mission which is focused on education, employment, expertise, and entrepreneurship. And the reason why is because alongside diversity and equity inclusion, there's a new word that's come up a lot, which is belonging. Yes. Right? A feeling of belonging, of being default. And I know that people in their uniqueness do a lot of mental, socioeconomic, and sometimes social gymnastics before they get to be as good as they are, before they get a chance to participate in this panel or participate in our industry by and large. And I think the work that we all share is trying to disrupt some of those mental gymnastics, socioeconomic gymnastics, social gymnastics that young women, people of color, indigenous people, neurodiverse people need to do in order to be as great as they are, to belong, in the space. And sort of hearing, what Layla's speaking to of a cohort, right? That treats each other as default, and where are we going to go now together, collectively? The program, Jim's putting in place, right? With the endowment honoring Lawson, where there's going to be cohorts of Black and Indigenous people, right? Growing together. And the work that Susanna, you've been doing since before it was cool, okay? You've been changing games, making that dollar out of 15 cents before all of us. All of that work, and with the support of corporations like Take-Two, right, is enabling us to move a generation forward. Specifically with GGP, we have a scholars program in partnership with Take-Two. Some go to USC, many go on to participate in Games for Change, and many have been girls who made games. And that's where we find ourselves intersecting, is at that college point of how do we take them towards professionalization? And then we hope to carry them through into employment, into being experts, right? Because that's the real challenge when you're trying to discover people. You don't want just to be entering, you want experts, right? And if things are going to really change, like this discussion, you need owners, right? Layla, owner. Susanna, owner. Jim, owner. All of you, owners of Facets of Your Business, right? That is where we become the batter, not the frosting, right? Where the change is, more than we can count, 2%, 3%, 1%. We aren't even the ones counting, right? We're still being counted, right? Until you're doing the counting, nothing has changed, right? I don't need to ask, how many young ladies are in Girls Make Games? You're like, all of them, right? What is the gender balance of Games for Change? All of it, right? These sort of systemic changes, that is the work I think we all share. I think it's why we all made time today, right? I've been to every E3. I was a booth boy when I started, and I'm still here, right? 25, 26 years later, haven't missed one yet. So I hope that someone out there sees this and begins their path, right? And this is additive, that's why we're all here.
I appreciate that. Yes, exactly what you're saying. There's so much more that all of us can be doing. The accountability piece is really very important, Gordon. Thank you for bringing that up. I just want to lay this out there to all our panelists. What can corporations do to really set themselves up for success in the near future and grabbing this new talent, this talent out there that we need to capture to help us build better, more relevant, engaging video games? What can corporations do?
So I was thinking about this in particular as Gordon was talking about the scholarships that he puts forward. So having organizations, companies like Take-Two have to be visible to young people, not just because they're buying, they're downloading the games off of Xbox or PlayStation, but because they're there in front from the beginning. And so Take-Two has been part of our challenge since the beginning, offering scholarships to our grand prize winners. And I can tell you that that's a motivator for kids to participate, not just because there's a scholarship at the end, but it's because Take-Two is part of it. Like, it made us cool. Right. And I think it's that relationship at that young of an age that makes a connection for people. Is like, yeah, they want to hear what I have to say. Right. Like, they're here because this program exists and because I'm interested in doing it. And I think that kind of relationship with these kids, whether they're mentoring and coming into a classroom, they're volunteering at a game jam or judging games at the end of the competition, they're involved. And I think that it really has an impact on young kids' lives.
Yes, I love that.
I just want to add to what Suzanne's saying. I think that, and something that, we're talking about Take-Two, and thank you for having us, is making the success of Black people, of women, of queer people, of Indigenous people, neurodiverse people, a business goal. Plain the same way that the consumption, right, of content, right, get some downloadable skins, buy some NBA 2K, right, that's a business goal around which the business is aligned. And I feel as though if the expertise of women, Black people, neurodiverse, other populations was a business goal, then that would be the change. It'd be that simple. Like, oh, our business is more successful if there is more of this, right? And that's about people being of value versus just being valuable, yes, which are two different things. There's lots of exceptional people, right, who are of value in spite of their circumstances. They're valuable, right? There's a difference between saying you're of value and that's a business goal in itself. And I think that's the real change, because it used to be, I mean, just real talk, it used to be about exceptionalism, right? And be like, oh, you're able to thrive under this duress, right? Isn't that cool? Versus, right, you are actually who we are, so we are going to cultivate you. That's who we are year round. That's what we look like, what we sound like, right? Who we are, right? And so as the lever moves more towards that, right? The same way, like I have biases. I attended Harvard College, so I'm of value, right? There's value in that, right? I'm treated that way in some circles. If the same lens was put onto women, onto brown people, Black people, queer people, then there'd be no, as the kids say, no cap on the change that could take place.
Right. And that just speaks to being deliberate with our diversity, inclusion, equity practices. Corporations really have to take that accountability and, like you said, do what's right in that spectrum, in that conversation, looking at value from different sources and kind of recalibrating our minds to that. But like you guys have said, it takes time. It takes starting earlier in the pipeline. I love that you just call that out. What other things can corporations do that are just different than what we've been doing in the past, perhaps? What would you recommend?
I would even add to what Gordon just said. The looking at this challenge as a business challenge is key. That's what between the inspiration of the social justice marches from last summer and really talking to our chair, Danny Bilson, who said that, hey, if you were going to tackle this issue, this giant generational issue as a business problem, what would you do? And that flipped the light switch on for me. Well, of course, like any business problem, what are my challenges? I've got gaps in my supply chain, if you will. So how do I fill those gaps in my supply chain? And really working your way backwards in a way where you're putting objectives, strategies, and tactics in place to achieve those goals from a business perspective. You're going to see outcome when it's not just, hey, here's a check and good luck with charity X. It's going to be more of, okay, here's a check. This is what we're hoping to see. Let's measure along the way and see if we're seeing progress on that. And it's the measurement of progress and adjusting in real time based on the data that you're getting back. That's where you're going to meet. That's where you're going to see the gap start to close in a meaningful way and be able to point out to other people in the industry, like, hey, this is what we can all do together. What if we scale this effort up and really had an impact on society as a whole? That mindset is really going to be what changes the game.
So I like to think about it as like a pie. You know, when we think about from a corporate strategy, we always think about there's a piece of the pie and everyone gets a little piece of the pie. But I think the way we have to approach this is really the pie is not a fixed size. I think by including more people, the pie gets bigger. So it's not a fixed size that we're trying to all get a piece of, but by including more people, you know, in the industry, by becoming creators of this medium, we actually expand the medium, expand it beyond just entertainment. And I think that speaks really heavily to me as a problem solver. Is like when I look at video games, it's such an underutilized tool for social change. And I think like that, I can see Susanna kind of has been on the forefront of that. And coming in as an outsider to the games industry, I was just kind of blown away that, oh my God, you can do so much. Like 9 out of 10 kids play video games. You know, not 9 out of 10 boys, 9 out of 10 kids. We're talking about literally changing perceptions and inspiring and educating generation after generation. And yet that power rests in the hand of like a select few. And I think when you think about it, not just from a corporate responsibility, but as a social responsibility, like what are we putting out there for our kids to consume? I think we need to bring in pretty much everyone, anyone and everyone who's interested in building a future together in that. So between the pie and the corporate responsibility, I feel like there's a lot that that gets lost. Like, I think there's a big dichotomy between these are people that are doing good and these are people that are self-serving, but it doesn't work like that. We have to work together, and everyone does kind of go between what's good for me and what's good for everyone, you know, so.
Thank you for bringing that concept up, Layla. The codependency. We are all community members in this pipeline, and we have to be active, deliberate in our processes, in our systems, how we tackle this problem. Before we end this conversation, there's tons of questions that we have that we want to ask you. So I'm going to pause right now and give our esteemed questionnaires a chance to ask their questions that are top of mind related to our conversation today. So we're going to start it off with some questions from our other video game industry experts here. We've got Carrie, she's an executive producer from Private Division. We also have Vanetta, who's a director of talent acquisition with Take-Two, and Nir, he's the head of mobile for Take-Two. So go ahead and fire it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Tony. The first question is for Layla, but certainly open to having the rest of our panelists answer the question. But at the beginning of your career, did you ever imagine being a leader within an industry that is predominantly male dominated? And what is your advice for other young women that are interested in taking a similar path to where you are today?
Thank you, Juanetta. I don't think I really envisioned being in a male-dominated industry, although I did envision being in a male-dominated world, because I grew up in the Middle East and I was painfully aware of being a girl and how my life was going to turn out to be different from my male peers or my brothers or my cousins or any of that. I was fortunate that my parents were very supportive and they wanted me to pursue whatever dream I wanted. But I think having that mindset and coming from a world that was very much male dominated already prepared me for, you know, hey, whatever I end up doing, there's going to be more boys or men than me. I think the piece of advice that I would really give girls is to honestly not think about your gender when you think about what you want to pursue, because it's all about you specifically. You might end up liking things that people, even your age, your geographic location, your, you know, educational background, or your family might not have heard of or even thought of. And that is all the things that I ended up doing were things that didn't match anything that I had seen in my own environment, but I just kind of pursued what I wanted to. And then two is to kind of use a very selective hearing. I think you have to kind of develop selective hearing, listen to the people that care about you, that love you, and encourage you in being more of who you are, and diminish the voices of people who say you can't do things because it's never been done, or that's not how it is, or that's not how the world works. The way the world works is based on the world that we build, and we're continually building a new world. So it doesn't matter how things are done now, they're going to be done a different way as you grow up, and you can be part of building that world. So those would be like my two pieces of advice for girls, is to just pursue what you want and, you know, develop selective hearing.
All right. My question is for Susanna, but also open to anyone else who would like to answer. And I think Gordon kind of hit it earlier when he said that, you know, most of us didn't have a lot of examples or opportunities. I'm in that boat. I didn't have any programs and anyone telling me that I could do this, and definitely had to, not necessarily an accident, but really had to work in a different way, harder than most. So, my question, Susanna, for you is, could you share an example of how your program has impacted someone that has participated, or, you know, a few people?
Sure. So as I said, our program is 6 years old in New York City. We're a bit younger in the other cities that we're operating in, and there are opportunities now that kids all over the country can participate. But we saw in New York a very particularly strong cohort. We're actually in over 125 schools right now in New York City, and there are some rock star teachers that have encouraged their kids to participate, their participants, year on year on year. And that to me is certainly the beginning of getting this kind of program off the ground, and particularly in schools where students usually aren't offered this kind of experience. So one, having the teachers find value and really and work to and making it a part of an annual program within their school system has also allowed students to continue with the program year on year. There's one young woman in particular who won, I think she won the like our theme category the first time round when she participated as a sophomore. The junior year, she won again. And by the senior year, she was a grand prize winner in New York City. And I hear that she then followed on with a full scholarship to NYU Game Center. Right. And it was just amazing. And I just remember she was invited to speak at the Games for Change Festival after she won. It must have been the second year. I don't think it was the third year. And she came and we were having a panel, a conversation about, the program. And she was invited to speak on it. And her father came with her and followed her around the entire 2 days she was there with a camera recording her experience in this, professional environment, not only when she was speaking, but when she was sitting and watching the other people on stage. And it was so awesome to see that kind of support within her family. And I'm like, all right, you've got educators supporting this young woman, this pathway. You've got her family. And actually, since she graduated, I've seen other kids in her family come through the program. But it takes that kind of multiple supports from different directions to really support this young woman who is a woman of color from Brooklyn, who found her path, right? And she got the right supports and she got there. And now I also understand that she's launched her own studio and is raising money, on Kickstarter. She's remarkable.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. That's so cool.
Nir, do you have a question for our panelists?
Yeah, hi, I do. So my question is to Gordon. I'm looking at LGBTQ representation in gaming. I've been in gaming for more than 12 years, and it feels to me that representation is a bit low than what you would expect, what I see in tech in other sectors. Do you have some data or some thoughts about that? Is that the fair estimation? And if so, why is that? And what are the main challenges that LGBTQ individuals face in this industry?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you a little history here. So when we started GGP about 15 years ago, which is not that long ago in corporate times, queer people only existed on an anonymous mailing list, anonymous to each other.
That's
okay. Because employment safety, which is still a concern globally, not to mention just safety, was a number one concern which all of us lived with. So, even back then, weird flex, but I had designed Madden football, had already sold a company to Activision, employment safety. So that is the number one reason why. And just in this new recent history, have we begun to build the trust and value in each other so as to aggregate and to even acknowledge each other, okay? And to build systemic ties to companies like Take-Two and others to move from hiding from the industry, right? Escaping from the industry, to affinity, right? To employee resource groups and corporate leaders like Tony existing, right? And we're moving closer to being a business resource. And so in other technology areas, that path is further along, where it is like to say in the batter, that the queer identity is of value, and there's customers, there's of course creators, there's of course business leaders and owners, of all walks. And in the optimum business, you would cultivate, all types of people. As a game craft, we are still in generation one. You even asking this question here, You are a wild pioneer. You are the out there with your machete chopping down bamboo to even ask this question, which presumes that LGBT people would be employed, okay? And then in communication with each other, right? In communication with each other across different companies and in any sort of ongoing concern. So welcome, thank you for asking. For those of you at home, we have a Discord and a Facebook that you can all join and participate at any time, or you can reach out to me directly on Twitter, Gordon Bellamy. Wherever you may be on or off your path as an LGBTQIA person or an ally, right? Because I think that's something we've all discovered. And I think whatever population you are part of, whether it be across gender or race or expression identity, is that you don't have to be a member to care, okay? You don't gotta be a member to say, this is an important issue. And in fact, a lot of the work that we do at a corporate level is saying, hey, you don't have to do all the work, right? You know how to push the rock that's sitting on you. We're gonna help you push that rock that's on you. It's not on me, but I can help push, right? Because I can see it. It's on you. And so asking these questions, corporate support, time, right? 3 T's, time, talent, and treasure, will move this discussion forward. I hope that answered your question there, but otherwise just get at me. I can, tell you more. And anyone else there who's watching, we can tell you more in greater detail.
Gordon, I know your company has some things going on in the few months.
Oh, sure.
Talk about some of the activities you guys have.
Sure. So we have most of our content now, in addition to our Scholars Program and our community service that we do with Take-Two, is streaming. So we stream front page of Twitch and we bring it to YouTube, content around equity, inclusion, belonging. And not just LGBT, we just had our second Indigenous Game Creators panel yesterday. Big hit, because you know what? Indigenous creation has always been here, In August, we're gonna be doing our first GGP Honors, which is gonna be honoring the best in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in our craft. So we're gonna be lifting up the people who do the work, right? Every day in our ERGs, in our executive suites, like Dr. Liggins, right? These people need to be cultivated as well, right? The same way that we cultivate engineers, artists, and other things that we value, right? Things that we value need to be cultivated. So we're gonna begin to do that work August. Tune in, front page of Twitch. It's going to be a mood. Hope you're all there.
Awesome, thank you. We probably have time for one more question, so let's go for it. Who's got their last burning question for our panelists?
Oh, I have several questions.
Burn.
It's one, we'll just speak. I have to come from the affinity group, ERG, BRG perspective. So Gordon, thank you for touching on that. So this question is for both Jim and Gordon, as someone that represents a member of an ERG as well as a leader of an ERG. What advice would you give ERGs, affinity groups, BRGs that are either just starting out or those that are established in organizations that are looking for ways to further embed themselves into the business, so that better versus the fixing that you're talking about?
Also, to add to that, I think something that a few of us have touched on earlier is an old adage from the business world: you can't manage what you can't measure. If you don't have a way to see how your progress is evolving over a continuum, you're kind of just going, well, I think something's working, let's just keep doing that. And business people, myself being one of them, don't respond well to that. It's just okay, let's just keep investing in a thing that I don't know the results of. You need to be able to go back and say, hey, this year we were here, this following year we were here. Here's the, not only have we seen a positive impact on the investment or good ROI, but we also recognize the fact that the partner and partners that we're working with are making moves and making investments into the future that they're saying that they want to see. The positive feedback loop of being able to say, here's data that shows that what we're doing is having an impact on our objectives, and rewarding that partner or those partners for that investment and for that support. that's really key to building a positive feedback loop around investing in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, what Jim said, but I'd still say make it mobile. God, if you could move that needle like 0.2%, anything, you can't get cut. You can't get cut then, right? There's no way, no one can say budget's tight when you're moving that needle 0.2%, right?
Yeah, the scale at which we all operate, it's pretty staggering when you think about it. When you aggregate how much revenue and profit goes and gross profit goes in the games business, for a meaningful moving of the needle of DEI, comparatively speaking, it's not a huge amount of money. It's, to have a really big demonstrable impact, measurable impact. If we aggregate our dollars and really focus on some key objectives, we can really move the needle in a way that's going to, frankly, when you start seeing things work, people get excited. It worked. Let's keep doing it. Let's keep doing it. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's why the Lawson Fund is what it is. It's an endowment because we want to see it have an impact in the aggregate over time, over generations, and support students for decades to come. Not just have it be this fiscal year, what can we do?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
One more thing, just to let it go, is just keep saying Black out loud. Right? Let's get back to Black is beautiful. We've been residing in Black Lives Matter for a long time, and we need to be back to like Black and proud and Black and beautiful. And so your existence, right? And saying it and saying positive outcomes after the word Black is meaningful each and every day that you can do it in your ERG.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Thank you.
Good question. We've got time for more. What else do we have?
All right, I'll go if we have time for more. Layla, how have you been able to actually connect with the people in the community to bring awareness for your programs? Like, how do you actually gather people, to participate, and especially like in the very beginning?
Oh my gosh. So the first camp in 2014, we literally like barged into a maker fair with flyers, and we were just going around and being like, you look like you would love video games because you're playing with robots right now. So come to our camp. But I think it's pretty much primarily been word of mouth originally, but then when we ended up partnering with the game studios and game companies, that really helped elevate the program and the PR. I think Susanna touched on that. It's like it actually legitimized us and then kind of made us really cool. Like, hey, you can go make games at these game studios. You can actually make a game at Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, Take-Two. You can go into their offices, meet the developers, and make these games. And I think that cool factor has kind of really helped us out. When it comes to speakers and people who want to mentor and be involved, that's been a lot easier because, a lot of our teachers end up being college students themselves, and they come back and they'll say things like, I wish this program existed when I was younger. It sucks I couldn't go to it, but at least I get to be a part of it and give back to the kids. And then same thing for mentors and speakers. There's so much interest in wanting to give back and wanting to welcome new voices into the industry. We haven't really had to do a lot of pushing. In fact, we get pulled in a lot of directions. I was talking to my team the other day. I was like, this is a very fortunate problem to have where we're getting pulled in 100 directions because we're needed in 100 directions, as opposed to us telling people that, hey, this is important, pay attention, and, look at what we're doing. So I would say it's been very organic, and really the tide is turning. We're building a new industry. We're building on the industry that we have, but we're also building a new part of the industry together. So it's really exciting.
Thank you. Thanks, Layla. And thank you to our panelists. You guys have been very inspirational, very thought-provoking, and have left us with a lot of great tidbits to take away, to take back to our corporations and our respective organizations to really make a deliberate impact in our community that we're building and this whole world of diversity and equity and inclusion in the video game industry. So thank you all. Thank you, the viewers, for joining, and have fun at the virtual E3 conference.
That's not all. We've got one more thing to share with everyone, and it's safe, social, and sustainable. And what am I talking about? Well, no other than Project Hazel. We announced this at CES earlier this year. And at CES, we had some truly insane press coverage with everyone out there saying, when can I get a Project Hazel? Will you make it into reality? And it wasn't just the press. We had resounding response from the community, every single one asking us to make Project Hazel a reality. And many of you had great ideas for features to remove. We've heard your feedback. We continue to hear your feedback on Twitter, on Facebook. Ping us anytime because we listen to all the feedback for gamers, by gamers. And what I thought I would do today is that I'd give everyone an update on the project because we are going to be making Project Hazel a reality. So what kind of updates can we give? Well, when the pandemic first started, we converted one of our manufacturing facilities to make surgical masks. Today, we at Razer make high-quality, certified surgical masks, and we ship them worldwide. We've donated over 1 million masks worldwide in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, etc. And we continue to do that. High-quality surgical masks meeting the very best standards. And what we've done is that we've taken the learnings from that, the engineering, the design, and we've put that into Project Hazel. So Project Hazel is going to be using replaceable N95 grade filters. We've now designed in a secure silicon face seal. These are just some of the updates since the last time that we talked about this at CES. And we are going to make sure that Project Hazel follows the lab testing with BFE rating that we've done for our surgical masks. That's the safe aspect. Now, what about the social aspect? What are we keeping? What are we not keeping? Well, first up, the clear, transparent design. We're definitely keeping that. We're also adding in interior lighting so that in low light conditions, you can still see the face of the Project Hazel user. And one of the big things that we've added this time around is anti-fog coating. So we've got an anti-fog coating on the inside of the Project Hazel to ensure that the social function still remains even during use. Now, what about sustainability? Now, many of you will be aware, sustainability is at the core of what we do over here at Razer. We care a lot about the environment. One of the things that concerned us the most when we were making these one-off surgical masks was the sustainability of the surgical masks. Well, Project Hazel has got a reusable mask design, and every single filter lasts 3 times longer than single-use surgical masks. And what I'm really proud to say is that every filter uses 80% less material than traditional surgical masks. Now, I'm sure many of you are waiting to try out Project Hazel, and I'm going to talk about availability at the end of this. But if you can't wait to try Project Hazel out, we've got something really special for all of you. You can try the Project Hazel filter online and see how it looks on your face. You can check it out on Instagram, check out Razer, and here's a quick video to show how you can use the Project Hazel filter on Insta. Now remember to tag us with your Project Hazel filters because we will be watching out for all of you, and we might have some pretty cool giveaways for Project Hazel when the time comes for shipping. So we've got a quick video to show you the updates that we've made since the last time we announced this at CES. Here you go. So, I'm sure many of you are asking, when can I get one? When do they ship? Well, With the insane demand that we're expecting for Project Hazel, we've put together a plan so that we can get as many of these units out to you as possible. We're going to have limited quantities right from the get-go. So once we start manufacturing, we're going to be doing sale by drops. We'll have all the database of everybody who wants a Project Hazel, and we'll send you information once there are units available. And our first drop is going to be happening early Q4. We're still perfecting it. We're taking in all the beta feedback. You're going to see units out in the field, but the first drop is going to happen early Q4 once we've got most of the testing and certification done. And it's going to be available exclusively on Razer.com. And you can sign up now for all the information at rzr.to/project-hazel. So thank you very much for joining us here today at the Razer keynote at E3. I'll be seeing you guys soon. Goodbye.